Bill Murphy of GATA, the organization which exposed the big banks and their gold suppression schemes, just gave us an incredible interview full of insights as to the conspiracy behind this paper manipulation. It's a must listen. Make sure you know exactly how the professionals invest in the precious metal sector. Go now to portfoliowealthglobal.com/gold playbook. It's essential reading from Tom Beck, founder of the newsletter. Enjoy the interview.
Welcome to the Industry Experts Panel at PortfolioWealthGlobal.com. My name is Michelle Holliday. Today's guest is a power hitter in the financial industry in regards to precious metals price suppression, which is happening right now within the large commercial banks on the COMEX in New York and London. Our guest today is Mr. Bill Murphy. Bill is the chairman and director of GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, which monitors the precious metals market. Bill, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Great to be here, Michelle. Thank you.
Bill, Tom Beck, the founder of our company at Portfolio Wealth Global, wants this interview to be like an encyclopedia for all investors who want to understand the precious metals markets, to make sure that we give our audience a full and comprehensive overview of this sector. First of all, what are the available methods for investing in precious metals, such as gold and silver, and how does one go about investing in them?
Well, people can go to dealers and buy gold coins or silver coins, gold and silver bars by themselves, or they can invest in the stock market, via various gold companies and silver companies. It all depends upon the personal, desires for certain risks to take.
Now, Bill, in regards to the bullion dealers, what specifically do they sell, and what is the best way for someone to store those ounces?
Well, as I mentioned, it's either coins or just gold and silver bars, and storage is a very personal issue. Some people want to put them to the bank, some people want to keep them at home in a vault, some people want to store gold and silver outside the country. It all depends upon a personal choice.
Turning to paper products, what are they? Who owns the exchanges, and what are the risks involved in investing with them?
Well, the exchanges are private entities, and in terms of the COMEX is located in New York. It's part of the CME in Chicago, and it's where people buy and sell paper contracts. They can go long a market, can go short a market, they can put on spreads and so on.
Now, Bill, what specifically is the COMEX? And also, please explain GLD, ETF, and the futures markets for everyone who is just beginning their voyage into investing in precious metals.
Well, as I mentioned, the COMEX is a paper-traded market, and it actually influences the markets because it's where the big players and the commercial banks and even the U.S. government are involved. When it comes to GLD, it's a exchange-traded funds in which people are investing gold and silver, but they're investing it in a sense a paper market, but it's actually supposedly backed by physical gold or silver.
And what does GLD and ETF stand for everybody that's new to the sector?
Well, I know GLD probably stands for gold, and ETF is an exchange-traded fund, which means you can, as I just mentioned, you can be involved in the physical market by actually going into the paper market, and they've created these exchange-traded funds for all sorts of commodities and stocks.
Now, Bill, going into your organization, what is GATA? Please tell us how it began and what is the mission of your organization.
GATA was formed in 1999 by my colleague Chris Powell and myself to expose the manipulation and suppression of the gold market and end it. And initially we thought it was just the bullion banks, and at that time it was Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and others. And then as we got into it more, we realized it included silver, and then it included the U.S. government, including the Exchange Stabilization Fund, as well as the Bank for International Settlements in Switzerland and other central banks. So it's a big deal.
Wow. Who is doing the selling in this sector, Bill? In the research that you conduct at GATA, are these mom and pop investors who are actually selling physical gold and silver right now, or is it mostly paper gold and silver?
Well, I got to tell you, you asked a lot of great questions. You always get me thinking. It changes. Actually, right now, the speculators are more short the gold market than they've been in many, many years. But normally what's happening, it's been happening year after year after year, this Gold Cartel, which I just mentioned who they were, will sell all rallies and sell and sell and sell. The speculators get long on the COMEX, and then they force them out, and this Gold Cartel takes profits and so on. At the very moment, it's a very rare situation in which the Gold Cartel raided this market, the gold market 10 weeks ago, and made it so bearish and took it straight down without any rallies that they've got the speculators under very rare short position. So there's a setup there for a massive short covering rally at any time.
Wow. Now, Bill, can you please explain how it can be that the price is going down while people are not actually selling their physical holdings? And why is there no price difference between GLD paper gold and real actual physical gold?
Well, these markets are controlled, as I mentioned, by the paper market on the COMEX, which we've discussed, and also in London is called the London Bullion Market, and LBMA, and prices are set. The physical market is set there every day. So there's a lot of activity, but it's influenced by the paper markets. It's the tail wagging the dog, and that's how things are watched every day, and we've had a lot of movement because of what the Gold Cartel has done, and when they need to sell physical gold or silver to get the price down, they do it.
Now, Bill, you've mentioned the Gold Cartel several times, and I know our audience's ears are perked up and want to hear more about this. You are famous from the early part of this decade when your tiff with the banks became mainstream news. Can you talk about it? And please tell us a little bit about yourself, because you have an extraordinary background. I know that you graduated from Cornell University and you were a starting wide receiver for the Boston Patriots. How did you get into the financial sector and then discover what was happening with this Gold Cartel? Please take us through that journey.
Well, first of all, it's pretty scary to think I played football 50 years ago.
It's most impressive.
Good grief. But I got involved, and I met a very bright man named Dan Ritchie, who was turned down the chancellorship at Harvard, ended up taking the chancellorship at Denver University. He was the chief operating officer, Westinghouse Broadcasting, and just a legendary commodity trader, and I got very interested in commodities through him and just listened to what he had to say, and I got lucky real early doing what he did, and I said, geez, I like this. And so I got involved in trading commodities and had my own firm for a while in New York City, and learned a lot about the commodities markets. And then it was a result of this experience in 1998, 99, early, that I realized that when long-term capital management, the big hedge fund blew up, that they learned that they were short a lot of gold, and all the bullion banks were short trying to keep the price down, and they were afraid that they would have to cover. So I saw them all go in at the same time, stopping the price around $300 gold. And I said, this is rigged. This is so obvious. I mean, what's going on here? And my colleague Chris Powell was just a subscriber to my website, Le Metropole Cafe, at the time, and he said, let's stop complaining, let's do something about it. So we've been on that case ever since. We've had 4 international conferences. We've been to Washington. We've had all sorts of email campaigns, letter campaigns, talk with politicians, and my colleague Chris Powell is on the case all the time still. And what's terrible about this is that the financial market press won't do anything about it or even allow us to be discussed. We've been edited out all the time. I was on CNBC 19 years ago and have been banned ever since. It's because we're taking on the rich and powerful. Nobody wants to go there.
Now, you were on CNBC to expose this, and they actually banned you then from that point forward? Well,
I was on CNBC 19 years ago with Ron and Son. I have not been asked back since. And just recently, last year, it was a big story about the Fed and their gold, and with the author of the story, we spent a great deal of time, and it was a front-page story, and everything was, we introduced them to people, and everything was in there but GATA. Their editors cut us out.
Wow. That's very interesting. Now, let's for the moment, I want to go back to a certain topic. From your perspective, are leveraged paper markets really dangerous for investors?
Well, again, it goes back to personal choice for risk. If people follow certain trading rules and so on, yes, but because there's such leverage, you only have to put up, let's say, 7, 10, 15% of the value of what you're trading. If you're in a futures market, it can be very risky, and things can get out of hand if you don't know what you're doing. Exchange-traded funds, of course, are a bit different because you're putting up all the money.
Now, Bill, does the Federal Reserve own gold? And if not, who actually owns that gold then? Is it the people of the United States or the Fed system? And if so, who are the parties involved?
Well, you've got the Treasury involved in owning the gold, and you've got the Fed and so on. In essence, it should be the people's gold. But what the real story is for me, is that the United States is supposed to own 8,135 tons of gold, but we don't know how much of it's been leased out or is even there. There hasn't been an audit, official outside audit since, say, 1955 or something like that. So we don't really know how much gold is there and or is not there. And that's one of the things GATA has been asking for, is a full audit and from independent people to show the American people what gold is really there. I mean, thing of anything, it hasn't been audited in all this period of time.
Is there no one that oversees that? Is there no agency from the government that can oversee the Fed? And why is there not, if there isn't?
Well, it's the U.S. It's like saying who is overseeing the U.S. government. That's what they're there for, And the irony is there's something called the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which oversees the futures market. It has nothing to do with the Fed and Treasury, but they won't do anything about the suppression in the paper market. And that's part of the U.S. government. So that's the problem. There's no sheriff. I mean, it's a very scary situation, and there's just no rule of law.
Bill, in your opinion, what is the fascination with gold and silver? Why do gold lovers complain so much about the federal debt? Why not just buy gold and wait for the crash if they're going to be right about what is about to happen to fiat currencies? In other words, why do gold owners make such a big ruckus about the price manipulation if it actually serves them very well right now to just purchase gold at such a cheap price?
Well, and you're right. The risk-reward situation now in gold and silver is as good as any time in history. The problem is right now is that other assets, these past, gold's been going down for 7 years and silver 7.5 years, really, from the time it made its highs. Other assets are going up and up and up, in art, real estate, the cryptocurrencies, the stock market, and gold and silver just muddling down here at artificially low prices. And we're ticked off because they're way too cheap, and because of what the government and the bullion banks have been doing, and it's not fair. And people that are interested in gold and silver are concerned about just money printing and debt, and what it's really going to mean that things are going to get out of control. And part of the reason that the GATA deal is so important is because it's disguising what's really going on, and that's why we stay on this case, and it's the reason. We get upset when we watch, this gold cartel go into action and keep the prices where they are.
How do you decide the overvalued or undervalued equation for the price of 1 ounce? What sort of system do you use?
Well, that's another good question. It's not a question of a system. It's just a question of where prices have gone, compared to other assets, and how much money has been printed and the debt of the United States. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And we actually had a 12-year bull market in gold from 2000 to 2011, and since then they've just taken it way back down. And if you compare it to what other assets have done, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, today gold is trading at less than $1,200 per ounce, and silver is less than $15. What is the cost of extracting these metals from the ground? And could we see a scenario where miners are losing money for several years, like in the case of uranium?
Well, in some cases that's happening now, because it depends where you are and whether gold and silver is a byproduct or you're just mining gold and silver themselves. But you're down to the cost of production in most places and below it, especially in silver. I mean, for silver to be below 15 is just outrageous. I mean, silver went from $50 in 1980, for crying out loud, and then went there in 2011, and now it's less than two-thirds the price of where it was able to go to. There's no other asset in the world that comes anything close to that.
Now, Bill, here's a question for you. It's the Gold Cartel, the term you use for the suppression of these precious metal prices. Who is the Gold Cartel?
Well, as I mentioned, it's the Fed, the Treasury, it's the Exchange Stabilization Fund of the U.S. government, the bullion banks like J.P. Morgan, the Bank for International Settlements, and other central banks. And it's very powerful organizations, and in the sense that they can do whatever they want, and are very sophisticated in the way they do it.
Working in unison as a group at the moment.
Absolutely, and that's how it's done. And they'll change their tactics here and there. And people will say, how could it be manipulated if gold went up 12 years in a row? Well, it was a really just gradual move up, and they kept taking out the speculators all the way up. They made money during all that time. And then starting in 2019, they just went out in an all-out attack. And just recently, as I said, 10 weeks ago, with gold at 1304, they decided to go into an all-out attack and take it straight down, the gold price, and with very little correction, all rallies sold. And I'm hoping it's their end game, in the sense of this has gone on far too long, it's ridiculous, and it's going to end in the not too distant future, and they've got the market so short and the specs selling so that they can cover their positions.
What do you think the catalyst would be to cause the end that you're speaking of, to allow the price to start to rise then?
Well, the biggie, I think, would be a derivatives issue, which is in some other area in which the markets just get out of control. And, things are leveraged up to the hilt, and there's no telling what could happen if there's a derivatives market blow-up in some kind of nuclear chain reaction. And that we had that years ago, but that's really been quiet lately, and it really got things under control. But if they lose control of that, all heck could break loose, and then all of a sudden, I think you could see markets go up, and gold and silver would be substantial. And I think silver is the most ridiculous market I've ever seen, in the sense of the open interest just yesterday went to an all-time high at around 244,000 contracts with a price at a cheap level. Well, normally the open interest would drop into oblivion at these low prices, and it tells me they're desperate to keep the silver price under control. And once they lose control, and I think that means getting above $21 an ounce, I think silver can go absolutely apoplectic to the upside in very short order.
Oh, what kind of numbers are you looking at?
Well, $100 for starters, and a lot of people throw out other numbers much higher, and it certainly can go there, but at this rate, I'll take $100 right now.
Bill, this has been an amazing interview. How can everybody follow your work?
Well, they can go to www.gada.org. Chris Powell does a great job, and get on his list. And I write a commentary every day at lametropolecafe.com, and people can sign up for a 2-week free trial and see what I do, and it covers the gold, silver markets and other parts of the economy, and there's other guest writers that write commentary and so on.
Wonderful. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, I want to thank you. You certainly, questions got me thinking, that's for sure.
Mr. Bill Murphy, Chairman and Director of GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. For the Industry Experts Panel, I'm Michelle Holliday at PortfolioWealthGlobal.com.
Mickey Fulp on gold bottoming, Mark Faber on bear market preparation, Andrew McGuire on gold-backed cryptocurrency, Tone Vays on Bitcoin's price range, and many more recent interviews are available on the channel right now. To stay up to date on Tom Beck's intensive research with his team on the general markets, dividend plays, cannabis stocks, blockchain companies, and precious metals under the radar opportunities, make sure you're a subscriber of the flagship newsletter at portfoliowealthglobal.com. Thanks for watching.